Welcome back to Weekly YouTube channel. I'm your host Owen, and today I am attempting to record this video for the third time. We're going to be going over my top 10 running backs in the 2024 NFL draft class. I have said that I've recorded this now 3 times. This is the third one specifically. The first one was just not a great recording. I really regretted how it came out, so I wanted to redo it. On top of having some other guys that I saw Brett Coleman talk me into watching that I thought maybe wouldn't even crack my top 10. Because I have about 18, 19 guys scouted now. Originally I had 15 when I first started recording this, and then all the other guys I thought there's no way they're cracking this. I haven't seen them graded that high. But I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to be missing anything. So I graded a couple other guys, watched some updated film on some other guys. I did it earlier on in the process. And so now, this is the final version of this video. I'm going to record it, get all the way through, and it's slightly different than the first 2 I recorded, but not by much. So we're just going to dive right into it. This is going to be ordered by how I have them graded. I'll go through, break down what I think about each individual player and why I have them graded there. Just a heads up, mine is extremely different than most people's top 10 list. I can assure you that. Everything I've been reading on who ranks who where, I am pretty far off from what they've been saying. So stay tuned, be excited, and you'll get some quick little hot fire takes pretty early on this list. So let's get right into it. At number 10, we have a new number 10. So there was move it in the first 2 videos, where now the guy who was number 10 is off the list. Number 9 comes number 10, and then we have a new number 8 who wasn't previously, or new number 9 who wasn't previously on the list. So our new number 10, previously number 9 on the list before I did an updated grading, is Carson Steele, the running back out of UCLA, replacing Will Shipley at that number 10 position. Now, Carson Steele was a Shrine Bowl guy, which a lot of the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl dudes this year were pretty impressive. I do like a lot of them. I think I like more Shrine Bowl guys than I did Senior Bowl, to be honest with you. I think there's just one guy from the Senior Bowl that's kind of coloring my perspective that way, so we'll get to him soon. But number 10, Carson Steele, UCLA running back, went to the Shrine Bowl. He's 6 foot 220, and he plays like it. Big boy, can plow through guys, arm tackles, breaking them easily. He can carry piles. He can be a really good short yardage back. And he has deceptively good hands in transition from receiver to runner. So I think he has some receiving upside there. So I don't think he's just a pure power back who can't be on the field for all 3 downs. Now where his drawbacks do start coming in is elusiveness, hot top end speed, and overall just technical wise. He went from Ball State to UCLA. He's on the younger side. He's a true junior, so he's not the most developed when it comes to his technique, and that may be able to get better when it gets to the NFL level with more high-end coaching, more experience, more playing under his belt. So we have some kind of upside here. I just don't think physically, athletically, that's where the upside comes from. I think it'd be more from him being a consistent power back who can get some more upside and maybe his route running and finding out how to be more of a technical runner with his vision and footwork. So, we start off with something that's kind of exemplifies the class as a whole. I have a lot of players on this list that I would describe as their style of running to be a power style, a power back type runner, which is kind of the kind of characteristic of this class entirely. So I'm not the biggest fan of it, but Carson Steele is one of the guys where it's he's a generic power back in a draft class full of generic power back. So I do like him. I like that he's younger. He doesn't have any major injury history. He performed at different levels of competition from the MAC to the Pac-12 in a year that the Pac-12 was pretty competitive. And overall, I do like a power back more than a smaller, undersized guy who maybe has some other things that are not totally elite. So I will side with that more often than not. So don't take this as Carson Steele's a bad player. He's just very much has a defined role, whereas a guy who was off the list of Will Shipley was kind of a mixture of that, a power back, but could make a guy miss, but wasn't really that strong moving the pile. Carson Steele's guy comes in, you have 4th and 1, you give it to him, he's going to hit the hole, whether there's a D lineman there or his own offensive lineman's ass, and he's just going to plow through there and get those chains. He's going to get touchdowns in the red zone. I do think he has a defined role as a running back in the league. It's just very likely that he's going to have a pretty low ceiling when he first gets in there, and he's going to have 1, maybe 2 contracts worth of play in him as that short yardage back and nothing more after that. So that's our number 10 there, Carson Steele. True junior out of UCLA. Number 9, somebody who cracked the list after not making it for the first 2 editions of this video recording process is somebody that a lot of people have as their RB1, which is going to be a common trend in this list of people's RB1s being lower on my list than even the top 5. So we start off with this one, which is going to bring the heat, and number 9 is Braylon Allen, the running back out of Wisconsin. I want to like Braylon Allen a lot more than I actually do. I see the power. He's 20 years old, going to be 21 his rookie season, I believe. And he has power. He's rocked up, absolutely jacked. He's young, not a lot of tread in the tires after having the split carries and be a backup role when he first got there. I do think he is another power back in this conversation of this class, who has equal amounts, contact balance and power to drive a pile and break arm tackles. He's a slightly better athlete than Carson Steele. He's slightly more, has slightly more wiggle and can make guys miss than Carson Steele, but I wouldn't say it's by a lot. His receiving isn't as good as his, but I do just think overall the fact that he's young and has a lot more football to play ahead of him. He probably has 2 to 3 contracts in his foreseeable future as an NFL athlete just because of how young and how fresh his legs are. I just don't see a lot of upside when it comes to physical traits outside of just being absolutely stacked. I do think his footwork is sloppy at times where he can have good reps. And there's some games that are better than others, but there's other games like the Ohio State game where he's just totally outside of his frame and he's not able to plant his foot in the ground and cut hard on a late opening hole and burst through it. I just don't like his footwork that much. His vision is pretty good. And like I said, he's just an absolute tank out there at a young age and has a little bit of juice, but another thing I would say is even average NFL juice. He's kind of slow. So I wouldn't say he's going to be able to crack 50, 60-yard runs and take it to the house and not run DBs. But that's not his game. His game is just to truck guys. And while that does have some limited upside, it does also, in the same vein as Carson Steele, give you a kind of floor where he's going to come in, be your short yardage guy, can take early down snaps where he's just plowing forward, getting 3 to 4 yards of carry, and picking up those hard-earned yardages to set up your passing game, which he won't really be contributing to. Personally, I'd rather take Carson Steele in the 3rd round than Braylon Allen in the 2nd, or Carson Steele in the 4th and then Braylon Allen in the 2nd. But that's just me. I think Carson Steele is less technical when it comes to his vision. Braylon Allen is. Braylon Allen's more just a natural running back than he is. But I think the receiving pass off is there, so I wasn't giving Braylon Allen enough credit when it came to his level of power. I went back and rewatched the games I watched, and I was like, okay, I was being a little harsh on him just because I didn't really like his footwork and some of the plays he was putting on film. And I adjusted it accordingly, and that's what got him up here to the 9th spot. So he's the reason there's actually any change on this list. Following this, it's chalk with the past 2 editions of this, so we'll get right into that with our number 8 running back. At number 8, we have Dillon Johnson, the running back out of Washington. Somebody I watched extensively this year just because I'm a Washington fan. I watched every single one of their games, and I kind of know the background more so with Dillon Johnson. Came over as a backup from Mississippi State, kind of came to his own as a contributor his last season there. Came into Washington expecting to be kind of the guy to spell the starter there. I always struggle with his name, Wayne Taupapa, something like that. I apologize for butchering that. And he came in expecting to be the kind of spell guy, secondary back. Running back 1 gets hurt week 1 of the season, and he's the starter. So while being not I think he's a senior, maybe he's a true junior, redshirt junior, but having no previous starting experience, he came in and showed really nice technical ability with footwork and vision. He has more juice than the 2 previous guys we talked about, while still having a more big frame and being able to power through smaller defenders. He's not a pile pusher like the previous 2 we talked about, but he is going to have really good contact balance, can break arm tackles, and can slice through some holes and push a little bit, but nothing crazy. There was a couple plays against Arizona where it was 4th and 1, 3rd and 1 to try to seal that game. He just couldn't make that yard to gain. I would trust the previous 2 guys on this list and him to do that, but he offers more athletically, as well as probably the best as it comes to receiving of the 3 of them. While Washington didn't use him particularly well in the receiving game, asking him to do more complex things, he showed really good hands and was able to use his physicality against smaller DBs if he ever matched up with a safety or a corner out wide, and really get open and then make them pay immediately after the catch. Turn it upfield and immediately break a tackle, stiff arm a dude, show off that physical running style out in the open field. So even though Dillon Johnson isn't a more defined role as he's going to be your power back, I think he's more of a 3rd down back that maybe you bring a guy in like a Carson Steele in a later round if you take Dillon Johnson early on, or just sign a guy like a Latavius Murray or Damian Harris, bring them in to be the short yardage guy when Dillon Johnson, really trust him to do that, or help him improve that with, improving his leg drive, getting him in the weight room, try to bulk up that lower body a little bit. And while he did have some injury concerns throughout his final season there, he, again, was relatively unused in Mississippi State. Those final year where he got a little more action, and this year was his first year of true starting, so he does have a lot of tread in the tires, even though he did get a little banged up his senior year. And that's kind of something I want to use to parlay into the rest of the list, because this is the first time it actually comes up. all of my grades are different based on position, based on what, obviously you're not going to grade a running back on how good they are at run blocking like an offensive lineman. But the only thing that is consistent for running backs that isn't for anybody else is a durability grade. Because running backs, you have to look at how are they going to last, if they're going to make it to a second contract, how much tread was taken off their tires in college, are they going to be able to go through their rookie contract and not lose a step or anything, because running backs age like milk. So that is one thing that I don't grade on any other position on besides running backs. I usually don't consider, when I look at the film, I'm like, okay, we're just grading film, durability concerns be damned for most positions, except running back, because that is a big importance to what they're going to do as the NFL, at the NFL level, how much they can contribute to your team, whether it's right away or down the road, because when you're drafting somebody to hopefully help you for 5 to 10 years, no matter where you're drafting them in the draft itself, what round. So that is why I have mentioned of like Dylan Johnson being banged up his senior year, but having low tread of his tires, so his durability grade isn't that low as opposed to some of the other guys we'll talk about in a second. At number 7 is another one of these RB1 types that people have been talking up, especially before the season ended in college football. This was the hot name coming out that was going to be like the RB1, sneaky RB1, in contention with another guy we'll get to later on in this list. And that's going to be Jonathan Brooks from Texas. I get it. Listen, I understand why everyone has these guys as their RB1s one way or the other. Braylon Allen, I see the youth and the power and the ability to get better with his footwork and technical side. Plus the pass blocking can be an immediate contributor on third down even if he's not that great of a receiver. Jonathan Brooks, I also see it. He is younger. He's yoked up. He's 6 foot, and he can play with that power. He loves going north and south, and he has more juice than probably anybody else we talked about on this list to this point. He can break runs long. He's clearly able to make plays in the open field and outrun different kind of DB, or get some smaller DBs while still having that kind of power edge to him. He's elusive, which is weird because when he's head up on a DB or a defender and he makes a move, makes a miss, it looks kind of like stilted and like stiff. But it works. Like the guy misses when he's head up on him, and he's able to then continue to burst through the hole, and it looks good. I do think he's advanced for his technical abilities as a runner based on how young he is. So I do see a lot of promise with him. And even as a receiver, Texas didn't use him all that much, but he did run some crossers, some stops on the outside, ran some option routes and Texas routes out the backfield there at Texas, ironically, and showed some good hands and showed some natural ability as a receiver. So I like all of the tools with Jonathan Brooks. There are 2 issues I have with him, though. It's keeping him from being RB1 or even like RB5, which is why he's here at number 7, is, 1, he works a lot better as a north-south runner than east-west. Like, when he has to go and bend it outside or go lateral to the line of scrimmage, his elusiveness, which was already kind of iffy going north and south anyway, is a total, like, dud. Like, he can't really make guys miss while being lateral to the line of scrimmage, and they're trying to come down on him from an angle. He needs to be head up on the guy to try to make him miss at all. Also, his vision suffers when he's trying to bounce it out wide. I know I can see him look, and like there's a hole that leads to the outside where he can bounce it out. He can find it with his eyes, but he won't ever hit it. It's like he doesn't trust his athleticism to hit the outside and break it long, and he would rather take the 3 to 4 yard positive gain to potentially the 20 to 30 yarder because I know he has the athleticism to do it and the power to finish runs hard and really break these DBs. Not break their ankles, but truck them and stuff like that. So I see that he has like this inability to want to jump outside. While there is a criticism for guys who always try to bounce it outside, always trying to use their speed, and are too afraid to go and take those hard yards. There's also it works the opposite way, where you have the ability, the athletic ability to take it there, but you just refuse to. And I think that's what Jonathan Brooks has an issue with, as well as when he's working laterally like that, he already shows kind of an uncomfortableness with elusiveness and cutting in general. I do like his one-cut ability with that, though. Sometimes, like when he's designed to work the stretch play, he can work it well, but it's just not what he prefers to do. He prefers to work north-south. And the other issue is the injury. And while I just discussed the whole durability thing with Dylan Johnson, this one's a bit of a different case because I believe it was the last game of the regular season for him against TCU. Jonathan Brooks tore his ACL. And while people are saying he's RB1, should be taken in the second round, I have him graded as a round 3 guy. Specifically because his durability grade gets knocked down a bit because of the ACL. Now, I know there is new science technology to make it so that you can recover from ACLs better and easier, and it's not that much of a comeback, or it's not as big of a obstacle for your entire career. It's more just a short-term injury at this point, and once you get used to it and your cadaver is more working in your system, it gets back to being normal. But if you're going to draft a running back, especially in day 2, which I still have him graded as a day 2 guy, don't get me wrong, but like round 2, even flirting with the back half of round 1, you need to be available from day 1 for them. They're drafting a guy there specifically so that way they could probably replace an existing guy. Like if you look at like the Bengals situation where they're trying to cut cap, they can look at the money they're putting in Joe Mixon. They can draft a guy, and if he's able to come in, start day 1, and they don't lose that much production, but save a lot in money, that's one of the biggest driving factors for drafting a running back. Not just trying to get more juice in the backfield, which that is another factor. They'll draft a guy like Jonathan Brooks because they want to get some more explosiveness and just better talent in their backfield without having to go out to the open market and pay for a more established guy. So if you're Jonathan Brooks, this kind of bit you in the ass by no fault of your own, because now they're going to draft you and you're probably not going to be ready for your entire rookie season. If you are maybe in a playoff team, you'll be able to come in and contribute at the back half of like January, February, because the injury happened in like November, December. However, I just don't think that's really plausible. Because you don't want to rush a running back, especially with how much they're going to need to be cutting and have confidence in that knee. So if you're going to draft Jonathan Brooks, yes, he has a lot of good and some question marks. He's not going to contribute for you right away, and that's one of the biggest factors for when you draft a running back that high. So I do think he's going to fall to a day 3 pick, even though he has the talent of a day 2 guy. It's just the reality of being a running back and having an injury like that so close to the end of the season that it impacts your NFL season. I personally think he probably should have went back to college for another year, missed his whole senior year, and then just got drafted so he could be a day 1 starter in the NFL after that and just look back at his 2023 tape. But he made the decision, and I think it's going to impact where he gets drafted. So that's why I have Jonathan Brooks here at number 7. Not entirely his durability thing, other things as well added to it, but that is a big contributing factor. Well, the hits keep coming and they don't stop coming. Another RB1, now the more trendy one as of recent, at my number 6 spot with Trey Benson, the running back out of Florida State. Now, before everyone jumps on my throat, let me discuss why I have him this low, and it's not because of medicals, even though I just went on a whole medical rant with Jonathan Brooks, for the most part. When I look at Trey Benson, I see the appeal. He is probably the best long speed athlete, maybe tied with Jonathan Brooks that we've talked about so far on this list. Combining that with the size and power that he brings as a runner is really exciting to see. It's kind of what I think people want Braylon Allen to be, where he's like this big jacked guy who can truck guys and push a pile, and still break runs off wrong. Unlike a Jonathan Brooks, who has contact balance, can't really push a pile and has that burst. Trey Benson can also push piles and can break it long. I do like his short area burst when he gets the handoff and hits the hole, as opposed to when he has to stop, like he shakes off a tackler and then has to re-accelerate back up to his top speed to break it long. I feel like in the NFL, when there's faster, stronger defenders all around him, it's not going to be as easy for him to break off these long runs that he got in the college level, just from what I watched, the long runs he did break. But he does have great contact balance. He does have the speed that if he is generally uncontacted and his speed is unaffected, he can build it up kind of like a Derrick Henry style ramp up, where it's just this giant freight train. If you let him get steam behind him, he's going to be running people over and going all the way to the end zone. And he does have impressive receiving chops, especially for a bigger guy who relies on his power and some speed, with kind of not a lot of explosiveness or agility to get open. When he's open, he shows great hands. He can make contested catches, and I do think he's a little more advanced than a guy of his typical skill set when it comes to receiving. Now, where the issues come in is kind of tied in with what I just said with receiving, is that he doesn't really have the best burst, stop-start speed or agility, so his elusiveness kind of takes a hit there. He tends to try to break tackles with physicality or truck defenders, as opposed to make them miss in the hole, and which is kind of what played into my whole thing about how if he gets to the point in the NFL where he's trying to break runs long by bouncing off tackle, then slowly starting to re-accelerate back in the open field, it's not going to be as successful for him there as it was at the college level. So that's one thing that's kind of taking a hit on him. And another thing that's film-based, which is something that most people might disagree with, is his pass blocking. Now, pass blocking, the way I do my grades is I take one category of my grading system of the 10 traits and put it as the least valuable one, and take some of the points I shave off of that one and put it towards the most valuable one. And the least valuable is pass blocking. So, yes, if I say someone's bad in pass blocking, most of the time it's not going to impact their grade that much, because usually it's like, oh, it's whatever. But Trey Benson's an active liability in pass blocking. Like, he comes in, and if he's not running out on a route, which, again, he's not the best route runner because he's not the most explosive and tight, to get open with his route running and explosiveness. He has to win by getting schemed open, being left open by the defense, and hoping they can rally up and tackle, where he can really show off his physicality and open field against smaller defenders, or just making tough catches with some strong hands and a bigger frame. So that's where he excels as a receiver. But when you're a running back, you can't expect to be catching the ball or being out in the passing down or pass every single time the team's going to throw a ball. Like, you're going to have to stand in and block. And Trey Benson, despite being as big as he is, and I think willing to block, he's just incapable of standing up and delivering a good block technical-wise. And it's going to get a lot worse when you have these NFL-level defenders who can blitz in and are good pass rushers even at linebackers. So I don't think he's going to be somebody you can consistently put out there on third downs if you're not expecting him to run a route out there. If a quarterback needs to make an adjustment and have Trey Benson step up and be an additional blocker and stay in because they're going to be sending an all-out blitz, I don't know how that quarterback can confidently stand in there and expect Trey Benson to make that block and keep him clean. So while, yes, it's not the biggest thing for a running back to be graded on, it is something you have to pay attention to, and Trey Benson is an active liability there and needs to get better at that. Which is the good news for him is that he has the ability to get better at that. It's all technique. He has the will, the want, the size to block guys like in pass protection. But it's going to be an issue of, does he learn the technique? And that's one of the easier places to improve at in the NFL level. So this criticism could be kind of unfounded in a couple of years when he is a better pass blocker. But for right now, day one, if you're expecting to come in and be able to block for your quarterback when he's not out there catching a pass, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. And then the final thing with Trey Benson is going to be the injury red flags. He took a break from football for like a year, I think, because unlike Jonathan Brooks, who tore his ACL, and the whole biggest issue with him is going to be if he's going to come back, is he going to be able to accept the cadaver and be all right? Which most time with the modern technology, it's going to be possible. But he's just going to lose his rookie year, and that's the biggest issue with his durability. But Trey Benson, he messed his knee up bad. It was a torn ACL, torn meniscus, torn MCL, and something I think in his hamstring or quad that he tore as well. Say hi, Mowgli. But yeah, he blew his knee out entirely, and then he had to take an extra time off than a normal ACL injury just because of how much damage was there. And we've seen guys like Todd Gurley who have these major knee injuries, and if he has another one like that, is there going to be a degenerative thing? Is he not going to be able to make a second contract because his knee can't hold up because his entire leg kind of went out on him? Is the technology good enough to recover all of those different injuries all at once and still have the strength there? Now, I know he played this past season and looked fine, but when it comes to the NFL, like after 2 or 3 seasons, is he still going to be looking that way, or is it going to start looking like that previous knee injury is going to catch up to him? So while it isn't as big of an injury risk as someone we'll get to later on in this list, because he's still relatively low on the carry rate, and it was just one injury for one season, and he looks like he's recovered from that, it's still something that I have to put a question mark on, because maybe that's going to impact him later on as he gets older, as those tendons start to harden, and the injury could resurface again, especially if he hurts himself again, which I'm not hoping for at all. It'd be terrible if it happened, but it's going to be more likely for him as opposed to anybody else on this list because of the severity of that knee injury, which is very important when evaluating running backs. So that's another thing that's going to be dragging him down. So those 3 areas, 2 film-wise, and then the one that is just medical history with how severe and how rare the injury he got was, which is what's keeping me from having Trey Benson in my top 5, even though everybody else is running back 1. And our running back 5 is kind of one of my guys who I've had an eye on for 2 years at this point now, ever since I went back and was watching Spencer Rattler film when he first went to South Carolina. It was this guy and Jaheim Bell, who I was really excited for because they both transferred to new teams, and they both succeeded in their new teams as well, and I'm really excited to get to Jaheim Bell's tape. I have another friend of mine, Scotty, who's been on the channel, who's currently watching tight ends, and he's talking to me about all the guys they're watching, and one of the guys he's bringing up is Jaheim Bell, so now I'm getting a little even more excited. But the guy I'm talking about is current USC running back, former South Carolina Gamecock, Marshawn Lloyd. Now, unlike some of the other guys previously, like Benson, Braylon Allen, Carson Steele, who have been like straight power backs that have their higher up list they go is because they add more onto that power back label. They're not just that. They have more complementary pieces of their skill set than just being a straight power back outside of like just Carson Steele, who's like the most minimum he can get you 4 yards. Marshawn Lloyd brings and runs with good power. He's not the biggest guy, but he runs aggressive and he has really good leg drive. He is more stacked than a smaller guy that we'll get to in a little bit. But he does run with power, However, that's not like his one thing. I wouldn't call him necessarily a power back because he does have some juice on the outside. He can break runs long. He has some wiggle, some elusiveness to break guys' ankles, both in tight and in the open field. He just does everything good, nothing great, but nothing awful. Like he does, I think the one thing I'd say he does great is his power ability, his ability to play through contact, stuff like that. And while some of the other stuff isn't as high as some of the other complementary pieces, the other running backs, another thing is as catastrophic as things like Jonathan Brooks and his outside ability to get outside with elusiveness and stuff like that. Trey Benson and his elusiveness and pass blocking. Braylon Allen with his speed and receiving ability. I think Marshawn Lloyd has the best baseline when it comes to being an all-around, well-rounded running back, but just not great at anything else other than maybe his power and his pass blocking. So a guy that you come in, he's not a starter, unlike some of the other guys we talked about, who are going to be like early down guys who get touches right away. Marshawn Lloyd can come in, and I really like him being like a 1B, maybe even a 1A eventually running back, but never going to be like that number one guy that you grind to dust and then don't give a second contract because you basically put 700 carries on him in 3 years. So I do like Marshawn Lloyd's skill set. I think it's the most well-balanced of the ones we talked about so far. And I'm a bit impartial, but I try my best to take the bias out of it. I just overall really like the skill set. He played a great complement to a passing attack led by Caleb Williams. He was one of the only other skill positions on that team that were impactful outside of whoever that true freshman wide receiver was, who was also injured this year. So outside of Caleb Williams, and you watched USC tape, you noticed Marshawn Lloyd where you didn't really notice any other playmakers there. So I do see him as somebody who can be more effective for a longer time in the NFL, especially with how the NFL is moving towards a more pass-heavy scheme where he isn't just a power back and he can fit more into different schemes and things like that. So that's why I have Marshawn Lloyd here at number 5. So we're going to be switching up a trend a little bit. In our top 4, it's no longer going to be just straight power back. It's going to be split 50-50 between some smaller guys and some other guys who can run with power but are a little bit more well-versed in other places of their game. Starting off with one of the smaller guys here, and somebody who I'm kind of thinking is being slept on a lot. Another East-West Shrine Bowl dude, and Blake Watson, the running back out of Memphis. He's smaller, 5'9", sub 190 pounds, but it shows up on his film. He has juice down the field. He can break runs long. He has the elusiveness to spin off of tackles and make guys miss. It's not like his biggest calling card, but it's there more so than other guys on this list have. I think he's probably the most elusive outside of maybe Marshawn Lloyd that we talked about previously. And surprisingly enough, despite being smaller, he has great contact balance. Guys try to get some arm tackles or half a shoulder tackle in on him, and instead of just falling over and going down because he's a smaller guy, he's able to bounce off those tackles and ping pong through defenders and still keep going and pushing his shoulder down and driving forward and picking up extra yards. So I do think that he brings more than just being a scat back speed guy, hit the outside and try to make a guy miss and break it long. He can run in between the tackles. He has excellent vision and footwork to really work through a bunch of different processes. He has patience to work in the power scheme. He has the vision to work through zone and then hit those holes with speed and break them long, like I was said previously. And another thing, even though I don't think he's a great pass blocker, and I wouldn't really call him a receiving back where he has extensive experience running multiple routes and running out wide and stuff like that, but when he gets the chance to catch the ball out of the backfield, he's able to transition from a receiver to runner really well, and because he has that higher athletic ability, he can more easily capitalize on these receiving attempts, unlike some of the other guys who need some time to build up or transition before turning it upfield. I do really like how he's able to capitalize on that without being a good receiver, but just using his athleticism. And the whole point of bringing your running back into the passing game on screens and swing passes designed is to get them into space so they don't have to worry about maneuvering through the muck, which he can do, but he also has the athleticism to really capitalize on the main focal point of why you get your running back into the design passing game. So Blake Watson is somebody who, outside of, I think maybe a little bit of Dylan Johnson, Marshawn Lloyd, and Jonathan Brooks, but nowhere close to what Blake Watson can do, has that juice that we've been lacking on this list, as well as just has more of an all-around game, but he isn't going to be that guy who's going to push a pile, not even relatively close. He can't really even, meet one guy head-to-head on the hole and win that. He's probably going to become the guy who gets layered down. He's going to be the nail instead of the hammer. But that's not really his game, and you'd want to complement with him with somebody who later round right power back guy like an Isaiah Grando or who's the guy? Deshaun Fenwick, somebody who's just big and can run through people. That's what you'll pair with Blake Watson. You don't expect him to be that guy. You expect him to go out there and make big plays for you, be a dynamic piece of your offense. Not to the same level, because he's not that level of athlete, but similar to how Devon Achane was for the Miami Dolphins this year. Again, not even close to that level of athlete, but still a pretty good one. Achane's just elite. I wouldn't call Blake Watson elite. He's just very good. So I do think that's kind of the role you'd want to see him in an offense. So that's Blake Watson from Memphis. At number 3, another guy who I think came into the season with expectations of being RB1 and kind of fell off a little bit. He was kind of lost in the sauce when it came to Michigan's run, with the focal point being on J.J. McCarthy. And now Roman Wilson's getting some spotlight for that. And with the whole Jim Harbaugh stuff, I do think Blake Corum has been lost, and I do think he still is that running back he was coming into this year. He's not the best athlete. Like, he's not. I think he's about equivalent, if not a little bit less, than Blake Watson, who I said was a good athlete, but not like elite. Probably a step less than Blake Watson. He's not the most dynamic in this list, but he is more dynamic than some of the guys we talked about previously. Which the payoff for that is he's a bit smaller, but he does still run with good contact balance. He has a very low center of gravity. He can break guys' arm tackles. It's hard to bring him down one-on-one just because you don't really have that leverage, the ability to leverage yourself, because he's so much smaller than most defenders that go against him. I think he's like 5'7", 5'8", but he still has like the 200-plus pound frame. He can make guys miss in the hole. He has some juice. I think his biggest question mark is going to be his lack of receiving. I know Michigan wasn't a very pass-happy offense as it is, especially not getting the running backs involved. And even when he was, Donovan Edwards would be the receiving back over Blake Corum. So he was kind of fighting to even get a chance to show that he could be a receiver. And his pass blocking, while not a lack of effort or will, he's just smaller, and his technique still needs some refining. So I think he's a subpar third down back, but he's definitely a good first and second down back and could potentially grow into a more all-around guy. He's also a great leader, and overall, as a pure runner, kind of like what we talked about with Kenneth Walker when he was coming out, as a pure runner, he is very good. And then if you can just develop that receiving side more so, then I think you could get an all-around back. He's maybe not the athlete that Kenneth Walker was, because Kenneth Walker was pretty good at Michigan State, but I don't think it's that big of a step down. And if you're drafting Blake Corum in the second round, kind of like in that Kenneth Walker range, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I do think you'll get an immediate contributor to your offense, especially on the ground, and somebody who can just come in and pick up 200 missing carries from your offense, 150, go for 700, 800 yards his rookie year, and that you can bring in to replace an expiring veteran contract or forego the market, bring him in and not really lose a step when it comes to running the football consistently with vision, with footwork, elusiveness, a little bit of speed, a little bit of power. I do think he really has everything you'd want, kind of like how Marshawn Lloyd was, but just a little better on everything. He has no real big negatives. I think his receiving is the biggest one, but that can still be proven to be more of a bonus than what I'm giving credit for. So that's why Blake Corum here is running back 3. And at number 2, we have the running back from Oregon, Bucky Irving, somebody who is way more dynamic and provides a lot more of a big play threat than anybody else we talked about previously on this list, and even more so than who we get to at number 1. Bucky Irving is that guy who, on this list of everybody else, would be the number 1 who I take to break 60, 50-yard runs consistently, which I did see him do on tape at Oregon. His vision and footwork are phenomenal, even when it's not, like, he's not a power back. He's 195, kind of on the skinnier side, kind of the antithesis of everything we talked about with guys like Braylon Allen and Carson Steele. He is slender, doesn't really have a lot of oomph to throw when it comes to pass blocking, which he's atrocious at, kind of figured. But also when it comes to running between tackles, he runs hard, like he has good leg drive, but he's just not naturally built for that style of running. What he excels at is getting out in open field, using his speed to outrun defenders. He has contact balance, so when guys come to hit him, he's able to just bounce off tackles, whether it's because they can't really get a good hit on him, because he is kind of slippery and kind of a smaller frame, or if it's because he's able to, with such speed, run past them, and they're only able to get an arm out and something like that. So I do like his leg drive. I like his contact balance just because he hits the holes with such speed and aggression that some guys have trouble reacting and getting a clean tackle off on him. His vision footwork, like I said, can work well in both zone and power schemes, despite not being the most powerful back. And while he is a good receiver, I wouldn't say like he is totally done learning the position. Like, he can get open with routes, whether it's out wide or in the backfield. I do think he has a little bit more he could get better at with that. But overall, as when it comes to running backs, winning with route running, getting in the open field, and using his quickness, acceleration, burst, agility to get open, and then making them pay afterwards, I think he has that, especially when he can turn his open field vision on and really attack the green areas of grass, which he can then capitalize with his speed. Where I do think he can improve, like I said, pass blocking. He's not really good technically, or like doesn't really have the frame, but he's like willing. He can do a chop block, and it's all right to really kind of slow down a blitzer. And as well, I think when it comes to his elusiveness, he can make guys miss in the open field, and he's much better with dancing around tacklers and stuff like that when he has the space to do so. When he's in the hole one-on-one, like a linebacker has filled the A-gap, and he has to try and make that guy miss to then burst upfield and get some more yardage after that, it's not really his game. He's not the most wiggly when it comes to in tight spaces. It's more open field where he can utilize his speed to also set up some more moves. So I wouldn't say Bucky Irving is totally lost when it comes to trying to use his power to break tackles. But he's still good with contact balance, recovering from attempted tackles and keep moving. But he's not powerful. He has some wiggle, but it's more when he's open field instead of tight. But he is dynamic both in receiving game and running game. And he's kind of more that modern NFL type where he can go out there, catch passes, hit the outside, be a threat. And if you have another power back or a quarterback who can bring that power style running game inside the 5-yard line, then I think you'll be set up for success with Bucky Irving as your running back. So definite start at the NFL level, just isn't elite at every single facet of the game, just elite at a lot of things and then meh at others. So that's Bucky Irving, our running back 2 from Oregon. And after all of that, who the hell is my running back 1? I've knocked off Braylon Allen, Audric Estime for PFF for some reason, Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, Bucky Irving. Who could possibly be running back 1 for the Weekly Huddle's running back rankings for the 2024 NFL Draft? And it's going to be Ray Davis from Kentucky. Now, I didn't know who the hell Ray Davis was. I saw Bleacher Report saying he was having a pretty good Senior Bowl, and he kind of established himself as a starting running back kind of prospect while down in Mobile. And I was like, okay, that's good enough for me to take a look at him. Maybe he'll make my top 10 somewhere. And holy shit, I didn't expect what I was going to see when I saw him. And my friend Scotty took a look at him recently, so he's starting his running back rankings now. And within the first 5 minutes of watching his tape, he texted me saying, like, this guy reminds me a lot of, he said that he reminds him of David Montgomery, which I think is a great pro comp. And if you know who David Montgomery is, remember how he was coming out of Iowa State, that's kind of what you're getting with Ray Davis, except I think a little bit more powerful and even a little bit more juice. I think the one of the biggest issues with David Montgomery was he was elusive, but had some lacking parts of his game, but still was considered like a top 50 guy. Ray Davis is 5'8", but he's 220, built like how I was talking about Audric Estime. There's absolute bowling ball. He has the ability to push a pile and break single tackles with his power. He has great leg drive and really good leverage, despite being 5'8". That can sometimes help a running back as opposed to hurt them if they do have that weight and power and strength behind it. So he's a great power back, but he's not just that. He has juice. He's one of the better athletes on this list. Obviously not better than Bucky Irving or Blake Watson, but he's probably number 3, really, to be honest with you. And he's very elusive. He can make guys miss in tight, out in the open field. He has great vision, great footwork. You can tell he's a long-time starter in college football. And that's really where his only issue is, because outside of his durability concerns, which I'll dive into in a second, his pass blocking is meh. It's all right. It's like not great, but not terrible. He has one game where he's awful and one game where he's pretty freaking good and another game where he's good. So it's like, okay, he had just a bad game when I first saw him. So overall, I think his pass blocking is pretty good. And his receiving is great. I think against Louisville specifically, he went on a wheel route, was double covered in man coverage, and made this really tough over-the-shoulder catch through contact to get a touchdown and really show off the speed there. And he frequently gets open, makes catches on wheel routes, on option routes, Texas routes, swings, screens. He's really good with transitioning from a receiver to a runner. He does everything you want in a passing down, as well as being a power back and having speed and elusiveness and footwork and vision. Everything is there. The only thing holding him back is he has the lowest durability grade I've ever given a running back ever. Specifically because, now he tore his ACL in 2020, and while I was saying that Jonathan Brooks, it's more easy for them to come back in that now. 2020 was the COVID year, so he wasn't really missing all that much when it comes to playing. So that's not the big issue. The big issue is he's played for 3 teams, and is now the 4th high, I think if I'm remembering the stat correctly, he has the 4th most carries all time in NCAA history. So not only does he have a knee injury, and he's going to be 25 his rookie season, but he has a lot of wear and tear on his body when it comes to running the ball at the NCAA level. So is Ray Davis going to be able to make a second contract? Maybe. I think with modern technology and being able to rest bodies and stuff, he could potentially make it there, but I'm kind of doubtful of that. So you're like, why is he running back 1 then? Because everything else is so fantastic. He's going to come in and be a team's bell cow starting running back from day 1, which I can't really say for anybody else on this list. I don't think anybody else has the complete skill set to be every down, 20 to 30 carries a game consistently, immediately when they first get drafted in. Maybe some of them can develop into it if they answer injury questions and develop better as pass blockers, technicians. Maybe add some more weight to put more power on, lose some weight to get some more athleticism. They have to work on stuff. It's not a great running back class. None of them are going to be like day one impacts, except Ray Davis. And while yes, he may only be in the league for 4 to 5 years if he can't stay healthy and if he starts to show a little bit of his age and wear and tear. When he hits his age 30 season, it'll only be his 5th year in the league, so that's a bit concerning. But for those 5 years, he will be the best running back in this class in that first 5 years of their careers. Now, some of the other younger guys like Braylon Allen, who will only just be hitting his rookie season age when he's in his 5th year option, he might be able to continue longer than Ray Davis, but I don't know if he will ever reach the heights Ray Davis has when it comes to pure talent as a runner. So that is my top 10 list of running backs. I kind of went through an experience here. I didn't really love anybody except for like my number one guy. Everyone I could find little bits to poke and prod at, and I tried to watch some of these guys, the ones who were considered number one overall guys in the class at the position, over and over again. Those are the guys I have the most games watched for, just because I was like, where are people seeing that I'm not seeing? And I just couldn't find it. I watched all 22. I watched broadcast. I watched games from their previous seasons, games from this season. I watched as much as I could to try to get with the consensus, and I ended up making this list, and this is the culmination of my work. So hopefully this one actually gets posted, and I'll be doing other positions with their top 10s going forward. I already did the quarterback tier list. If you want to go check that out, I actually put my final completed version up a couple weeks ago. That was my last actual proper video I posted recently. And now I'm going to be moving on to offensive line and corners and tight ends, and I'm going to be putting out top 10s for those on the way as we build up towards going to the draft in April. So stay tuned if you're interested in any of that. If you like this video, like, subscribe, all the other YouTube crap, and I'll see you in the next one.